As we get older, our priorities shift and we start looking at our investments differently. One of those investments is our primary home, where we live. A big question on a lot of people's minds is, should I rent and free up some cash for retirement, or should I own a home? Today, we're talking about a question that gets surprisingly emotional and surprisingly complicated. Should you rent, or should you own later in life? If you're between 50 and 65 or even beyond, this decision can significantly impact your financial security, lifestyle, and peace of mind. So let's break it down. Adam, welcome back to The Basement Economist, where we dig into real-world money decisions that matter, especially for those of us approaching retirement or already enjoying it. A lot of financial advice assumes you're 30, climbing the career ladder and planning to buy a first home. But what if you're in your 50s or early 60s? Your priorities will shift. You may be thinking about predictable expenses, reducing physical responsibilities, staying flexible for travel or downsizing, protecting retirement savings, or making sure you don't burden your family later on. So the rent versus own question becomes less about building wealth and more about maintaining stability and freedom. So let's start with ownership. Many people feel deeply attached to the idea of owning, especially if you've spent decades paying off a mortgage. But should you stay a homeowner? Let's look at 3 benefits of home ownership. So benefit number 1 is the stability of housing costs. So if your home is paid off, you're locked into relatively low housing costs. Sure, property taxes and maintenance still happen, but your monthly expenses are generally more predictable than rent, which can rise every year. So benefit number 2 is emotional stability and familiarity. So if you've lived somewhere for years, you know your neighbors, your doctors, your grocery store, and your community. That familiarity has real mental health value. So benefit number 3 is to control over your space. There's no landlord rules. There's no, we're selling the building, no surprise moves. As you get older, being forced out can be stressful, and owning gives you control. Now, let's talk about when owning doesn't make sense, because owning later in life has its own challenges. So raising maintenance costs, where roofs don't care about your retirement plan. You have larger homes you no longer need. Lack of mobility. A house can tie you into one place when you might want flexibility. And if you still have a mortgage in your 60s, that payment can eat into retirement income. Now, renting for many people over 50 used to sound like throwing money away. But financially, renting can be a smart strategic move. Let's talk about 4 benefits for renting. Benefit number 1 is zero maintenance headaches. No mowing lawns, no replacing HVAC units, no fixing leaks. When something breaks, someone else pays. That alone can free up thousands of dollars a year. Benefit number 2 is flexibility. What if you want to move closer to your grandchildren, try a new climate, spend a year in a warmer place? Renting makes that possible without the pressure of selling a home. So benefit number 3 is predictable, simple, and budgeting. Yes, rent increases, but renting means you avoid the big surprise expenses. A new roof, foundation repair, new appliances, those aren't cheap. Okay, and benefit number 4 is unlocking home equity. For homeowners who've built up equity, selling the house can free up cash for retirement, travel, medical emergencies, or even investing. Now, let's talk about when renting doesn't make sense. Renting may not be ideal if your rent is extremely high in your area, you're settled in a community you love, or you want long-term predictability and control over your space. So, at this stage of life, the decision is less about numbers and more about lifestyle design. Ask yourself, do you want freedom or roots? Renting equals flexibility. Owning equals permanence. How is your health? If mobility issues may arise, one-story rentals or senior-friendly apartments can be easier than maintaining a house. Do you want to simplify your life? Renting can dramatically reduce the mental load. And what's your financial reality? If you're house rich but cash poor, selling may improve your long-term stability. If your home is paid off and affordable, staying put may be best. Finally, do you plan to leave an inheritance? Home ownership keeps assets in the family, but it's not the only way to leave wealth. Here's a quick decision framework you can screenshot or remember. You should strongly consider owning if your home is paid off or almost paid off, you love your community and want to age in place, maintenance costs are manageable, your home fits your mobility and health needs, you want to leave property to heirs. So you should strongly consider renting if you want flexibility and simplicity, your home requires expensive upkeep, you're downsizing or relocating, you want to unlock equity for retirement, and predictable budgeting matters more than long-term investment. At the end of the day, there's no one-size-fits-all answer. Renting and owning both have real financial and emotional benefits depending on your goals. If you want more breakdowns like this, especially ones that simplify big money decisions for the second half of your life, hit that like button, subscribe to The Basement Economist, and drop a comment. Okay, so let's take an example of a friend of mine who's turning 80 years old. All right, so let's talk about her for a little bit. Okay, so let's look at what she has right now. Currently, right now, in cash, she has $50,000 in the bank, and that's it for her retirement. And she has a home that's worth $500,000 in equity. That's her two assets that she has. So she has $550,000 in assets. Now, her monthly income from Social Security is $1,200. So let's put that up there, $1,200. And her monthly bills, our utilities are $250. Her gas is $150. Her food is $600, and other is $200. So she's figured out how to live basics with the $1,200 a month she gets. There's one thing we didn't account for, though, that she has to pay for every year, and that's for her taxes for her home and her insurance. Now, that comes to a little bit more. And then what if she wants to take a trip to go see grandkids? What if she wants to take a trip just to get out of town for a while? So there's a little bit more that she's going to need. So she estimates that she needs another additional $1,000 a month to live off of, for a total of $2,200 a month is what she needs. Now, currently what she's doing is she is living off of the $1,200 a month that she gets from Social Security, and she does sell on eBay and Marketplace from stuff that she buys from garage sales and thrift stores. She was an antique dealer growing up, so she knows how to do that really well. However, now that she's 80 years old, she just wants to relax and go visit and play with grandkids and, have a good time. So let's look at her options here. Option number one is she can stay put, own her house. Now let's say she does that. She has $50,000 earning 4% a year, through a savings account. That's $2,000 a year is all she's going to get. That's barely going to be enough to cover her insurance and a little bit of her taxes. So she has to continue selling. Now, if she decides she wants to break into the $50,000 and live off of that, that might last her for maybe 4 years. So that's not a good situation that she's in right now. The other option that she can do is she can sell her home and live off of the equity and go rent a house. So if she wants to rent's going to be about $1,500 in her area to rent a house, which is $18,000 a year. And then she has an additional $1,000 that she lives off of, which is $12,000 a year. If she takes the $500,000 and she lives off of the 4%, that's an additional $22,000 a year. She's still going to have to use some of that $550,000 to live off of. If you do the math and you estimate out about if she takes money for a little bit from each month, we figure she has about 18 years she can live off of that money. That'll put her at 98 years old, which would be fantastic. So what should she do? Leave a comment below on what you would do. If there's other ideas, which there are, leave those down below as well, and we can look at those. Are you planning to rent or own later in life, and why? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.